Yes, Dan's right. I am looking for the next thing. Had an internship this past fall, but figured I'd just wait till the beginning of the talk to introduce myself and whatnot. Yeah, so I am here to talk about Swagger today. I tried this out beforehand, but can all you guys see that? Does that
Yes.
work? Okay, hold on. I'm just gonna grab my notes real quick. Alrighty. So I'm going to talk about Swagger, super interesting tool, really helpful for documentation and making sure that you have the right documentation for your endpoints, allows users to test it as well. I'm going to start sort of broad and talk about why I like Swagger so much. Honestly, as a kid, was never the greatest at following instructions. So having a good basis on which to, first of all, follow instructions, and second of all, to be able to convey those instructions to other people is really important, especially in coding. I think you know, you want to have consistent, clear, readable documentation just to take as much work as you can off the user. So I'm going to start with a story about how terrible I am following instructions. Picture this: I'm in 4th grade, and you know, some weekday night, mom has just left to go pick up my brother from soccer practice, something like that, and I was supposed to start dinner. So I'm starting with rice pilaf. Really easy. 4th grade me should be able to handle this, no problem. You measure the water, you put it in the microwave. 20 minutes later, you should be all good. So I do all that. I think I'm golden, and I go upstairs to not do my homework as I'm supposed to, but you know, play a little PS2. You know, kill some stormtroopers as one does. Then a little while later, mom gets home and all hell breaks loose, honestly. You know, the dog's barking, my little brother's crying, the fire alarm's going off, and I go downstairs like, what is happening here? And I come to a microwave full of smoke and basically a black charred bowl of what was supposed to be rice at some point. And the moral of the story here is that be careful being too literal about how you interpret instructions. When it says 2-3/4 cups, it does not mean 2 minus 3/4 cups of water. So yeah, from that point on, you know, it didn't happen immediately, but I have done my best to turn around the way that I read instructions and convey those instructions to other people. Most of all, you gotta be careful. You know, make sure that you understand that everybody doesn't read or communicate things the same way. Have a system, and then use your tools as much as you can. That's where Swagger comes in for me. Makes it really easy for me to sort of standardize everything and make sure that I'm getting that information across to the user really easily. So my first experience with Swagger happened last fall during my apprenticeship with CorePower Yoga, which I don't know if you're familiar with the company, but it's fairly large, like grew a lot over the course of the last 10 years or so, studios all across the country. So really large user base. And to manage that user base, we use a couple different APIs. One was Mind Body Online. The other one is that I helped transition to Zenoti. Those are both sort of spa booking type services, and works pretty well for yoga studios. And as you can imagine, lots of endpoints because you're doing lots of stuff with those users. And, you know, it can get pretty tedious. So how do you go about documenting those endpoints effectively? I back up a little bit. One of my favorite things about coding is using APIs. I just think that, I mean, they're incredibly useful. Their application is endless. You know, you can use everything from finding the nearest bathroom at Cheeseman Park to every single ground-based vehicle used in episode 1 of Star Wars, like just all across the board. But it, like I said, can sometimes be a little tedious to test those endpoints. And at the end of the day, I believe that Swagger is the best answer, the best tool out there for both testing and documenting those endpoints. Originally, it's called Swagger, and I keep using that terminology because it's much more fun than Open API, which is really what it's called now. And Open API or Swagger is a specification for describing REST APIs. It allows you to basically list out within a YAML or JSON file how your API is set up and more or less how you want to document it between methods, parameters, models. And then the other great thing about it is it's got a user interface that basically technical and non-technical people alike can get in there and test out your API endpoints, which is great for explaining and really getting people to understand exactly what your API accomplished. So like I said, it describes a few different things. You can list out endpoints and operation parameters, authentication methods, and then there's a little bit of room for some miscellaneous stuff like contact information, license, all that stuff. So here on the right, we've got an example of your JSON file, really honestly pretty straightforward. It just basically lists out all your endpoints, particular parameters, there's expected responses in there. And on its face, it might be a little bit tedious in and of itself to generate, but this rswag gem is pretty helpful in terms of doing that. So it allows you to run a rake file, which will auto-generate this file, or excuse me, rake task to auto-generate this file, which will then seamlessly integrate Swagger into your application and then access that documentation on the Swagger UI. Swagger UI itself looks like this. Now, on the left, you can see it basically as it appears on the page. It starts out looking like this, and you click and basically drop down this menu. You know, a little bit sort of simplistic and not very dynamic in terms of how you can use it, but very helpful for just quickly looking at your different endpoints and being able to absorb the information that they are trying to communicate. Over here on the right, you will see the result of this little button that says try it out at the bottom of that little first green section right there. And that allows you to actually send these requests to your API and find out what you get in response, which is really helpful, again, for really internalizing what your API is doing and conveying to people exactly how you can implement this. So at the end of the day, there are going to be downsides. Honestly, the output is simply a reference document. It's a list of endpoints and what you're getting out of them that is helpful, but also limited. There's not really room for alternative information. You can't have a comprehensive user guide or anything like that. But if you can understand that it's more or less a single use kind of thing, a unitasker, as we like to say, then it works great for you. The other thing that can be a little bit confusing is if you are using it with non-technical users, they may not realize that the Swagger will make those real requests, which can get a little bit dicey if you're trying to work with some test data or people are making requests and then wondering why the data is messed up. So you got to be a little bit careful and maybe use test accounts or a sandbox of some sort. Bottom line, I really enjoyed using Swagger. I've used it a lot for, mostly for Ruby and Rails, but it's great because there are tons of different open source tools that can integrate Swagger into frameworks. Everything from C#, Python, honestly, most languages you can think of, because it's so useful. And I think its biggest advantage at the end of the day is really being able to communicate in a beautiful, attractive, simple way what your API is accomplishing and the information that you can send to it and retrieve in return. So yeah, that's my presentation on Swagger. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I'll see what I can do to answer them.
Thank you, Zeke. That was great. We have a couple minutes for questions, and then we'll take a couple minute break, and then we'll jump into Joel's talk. So, does anyone have any questions?
What's your personal? Oh, sorry. Did I cut somebody off? When have you personally used this?
So I used it with CorePower Yoga, which was my Turing Plus apprenticeship back in the fall. And we used it to document API endpoints in which we were using the MindBody Online and Zenoti APIs to manage the massive user base, honestly, that CorePower uses. And so I found it very helpful, especially in terms of communicating to the product team exactly how each of these endpoints were working and what information each of them were conveying, and more or less our capabilities as developers in terms of what we could do with this user base.
Did you look did you use Swagger or the generated document or the generated YAML for anything other than documentation? Like, I know you can generate client libraries or do tests. Were you pretty much focused on the documentation, that kind of the Swagger UI, or were there other things you looked at?
So pretty focused on the documentation, and then that surface level testing where you're making sure that you're getting back exactly what you want. I do know that Swagger has lots of different applications. You can sort of extend it. There's got a code generator, which allows you to set up these SDKs and do a few other technical things. I'm interested in learning more down the line as to how I can implement it. But this time around it's pretty surface level.
Thanks.
I feel like I'd love to take a poll, but it's not that easy. Are you somebody else talking? I'm sorry, Dan.
Oh, go ahead, Tim.
I'm sort of curious how many people are using like API contracts at their companies even now. Like, 'cause it's something we feel like I want to do in every company. We never do. We're talking about it again this year, like we did last year. Like, want to do it again, but what many people actually do it?
We added ours last year, 12 years into the making of our app.
Can I ask what library you're using or not?
I actually don't know. I don't know if we're using a library.
You might have rolled your own or did something.
Yeah.
I know the founder of Middleman wrote a really good library called Contract Ruby. I don't know if anyone's tried that, but was something I've always wanted to try. We've talked about it. There's also a Shopify library that we're looking at as well for that. I can't remember the name of that one. There's a really popular library that they implemented, but I just can't remember the name of it.
There's your poll, Tim.
I'm going to publish it. It's official.
Great. Well, thank you again, Zeke, for that talk. And